Today I'll be going over the female reproductive tract. I'm going to start by drawing out the uterine horns, as seen here and here, which will then branch into the uterine body on one end, uterine body here. And they also go into the oviducts, which is this part here, which then go into the ovaries. And on the other side, again, the oviducts, and then the ovaries. And then from there, you'll have the caruncle, which is benign vascular growths on the uterus. And then you'll go into the cervix, which in certain species will be interlocking. And then we're going to go down into the vagina. We'll have the bladder to the side of the female reproductive tract, which will go into the urethra and the suburethral diverticulum. Okay. Then we're going to have the vulva here. And then we're going to have the clitoris. So we'll have all the parts here. And the vulva is the outer part that you can see in most species. All right, this is just a rudimentary drawing of what the female reproductive tract would look like. Tract again, however, I'm going to be doing it from a side view on a cow. And this is a rudimentary drawing of the back end of a cow. First, we'll start with the vulva, which is the external part that you'll be able to see when looking at the cow and its under the anus. Then it'll go into the vagina, and it'll have the suburethral diverticulum and the bladder to the side. Then it'll go further into the cervix, the possibly interlocking parts again, and then it'll go into the uterine body here, and then into the uterine horns here, which will then branch into the oviduct and the ovaries. And over all of this will be the broad ligament to help keep everything in place. Oh, and the bladder, like I said, to the side. The broad ligament will also be in place. All right. Now I'm going to keep explaining on a little bit better and clearer pre-drawn out version of the female reproductive tract. I'm going to explain the parts and the functions. So this again is the ovaries, and I'm highlighting them as I go. And so the ovaries' purpose is to produce eggs and to produce female sex hormones. Those include estrogen and progesterones. All right, I'm going to erase those. And the next part is the oviduct. This part here is the oviduct, and its place of gamete transport and the site of fertilization. It's also where the embryo begins development. All right, then we've got the uterine horns here and here, which include the caruncle. And then and then it'll go into the body of the uterus, which is seen here. And the functions of that is to retain and nourish the embryo or fetus, as well as for exchange of nutrients and waste products. It's where sperm will transport through into the oviducts. And then we're going to go ahead and go onto the next part, which is the cervix, as seen here. And the cervix is an area which could have interlocking, so it's much tighter in it. Interlocking ridges, and that's seen in cows, does, and ewe. Also, the cervix's functions are to prevent microbial contamination of the uterus. It's a sperm reservoir, and it filters out dead sperm. So it helps also just keep from infection of the animal. Next, we've got the vagina. And then we've got the vulva, which is the external part of the female reproductive tract that you're most likely to see. And the clitoris, which will become endogenous with the penis in a male animal. Also, the purpose of the vagina is the organ of copulation, and it's the site of semen. It's where semen's deposited. While the vulva is the external genitalia, as I've said before, and it becomes continuous with the vagina. It contains labia minora and labia majora, and it will swell in heat, while in heat for many animals. And then we have the bladder, which is just where the urine's held, and it's kept to the side of the animal's reproductive tract, so behind it. And then we've got the urethra and the suburethral diverticulum, which is the purpose is just to expel urine from the body. All right, and then one last thing I'd like to touch base on is the different types of uterine horns and uterine bodies. So uterine horn and uterine body that can occur in an animal. The sizes of each depends on the type. So the first type we're going to go over is the duplex, which is something more like this. It's very separate, and this is the uterine horns, and then the uterine body, and it'll then go into the oviducts and the ovaries. Then the next type is the bicoordinate, which will look something like this. It'll be very large. And this is in litter type animals that'll have multiple offspring at a time, such as a sow. And that's the oviduct and the ovary. All right. And then we've got the type seen in a cow, which is bicoordinate. And it'll look something like this. And those are the oviducts and the ovaries. And this is the uterine body. That'll go down into the cervix. Okay. And then we have a type you'll see often in the mare, which is a bipartite, which will look something like this. And then it'll go down into the cervix. And this is the oviducts. The oviducts and the ovaries. And again, these are just rudimentary drawings to show you that there are different sizes and formations of each. And then we have finally simple, which is what we'll see in humans. So it'll look something like this, with primarily a body and very little horn development. And then that's the oviducts and the ovaries. Again, seen here. And then you've got your cervix. All right. So that's just a basic breakdown of the parts of the female reproductive tract, as well as the different types that you'll see and what each part does.